I hope you got to see some of the scenes from last week's Paralympics competitions. If you were like me, you were astounded at the resiliency of the competitors. I saw men missing a leg barreling down the racetrack, women who were blind racing with confidence, people with no arms using only their feet to hold their bow, sending the arrow straight for the bullseye, and someone swimming like a torpedo but without arms. I saw people in wheelchairs competing on basketball courts, short people on the tennis courts, and more. It was a reminder to me that not all people see their disabilities as shortcomings. Given the choice, some people whom the world identifies as disabled wouldn't change a thing. Take, for example, many deaf people. Because their deafness allows them to be a member of a supportive community of people like themselves, many deaf people report that they don't want the ability to hear. According to the National Association of the Deaf, deaf people like being deaf, want to be deaf, and are proud of their deafness. Deaf people aren't broken, and there's nothing that needs fixing. Then why, you might ask, did Jesus heal the man who was deaf as if he were mending a broken toy? Let's look more closely at the text. Let's be open to reading it with new, unbiased eyes. Jesus is still in the land of Gentiles. He has just learned an important lesson from his encounter with the Syrophoenician woman. He's learned that God's grace is open to everyone, not just Jewish people. And so our text opens up by telling us that some people brought a man who was deaf to Jesus to be fixed. They begged him, our text says, to heal the man. Nowhere in the text do we get a sense of what the man who was deaf wanted. Too often, hearing people treat deaf people as if they are mentally impaired, as if they can't take care of themselves, as if they need someone to speak on their behalf. That seems to be taking place in the text. Now, in all fairness, I suspect the man wanted whatever it took for him to be in full community with the rest of the village. And if that meant giving him the ability to hear, then so be it. That's what most of Jesus' healing miracles were about. They weren't performed to show off his supernatural skills. They were done to restore people to community, whether it was healing a woman with a 12-year bleeding condition or exorcising a legion of demons from a man his village had tried to chain down in cemeteries, or in today's text, opening the ears of a deaf man. In each case, Jesus fixed it so the person who was marginalized by the community now belonged. That's what we all want, isn't it? We all want a sense of belonging. And so Jesus drew the man away from these curious onlookers and used a sort of sign language to explain what he was going to do. In other words, he treated the man with respect. And then our text says, looking into heaven, Jesus sighed deeply. What's going on here? I get the sense that there's a bit of regret, maybe even some resistance with this deep sigh of his. Does Jesus understand that maybe it's not the deaf man standing before him, but instead the rest of the people who need fixing? If only they could be open to something more than their familiar structures and systems which exclude people because they are different. If only they could be open. And so Jesus utters the Aramaic word for be open. And the reader assumes he's talking about the man's ears that need to be open, his tongue that needs to be freed. But maybe that's not the case at all. Maybe, recalling the power of the moment when he was baptized and the heavens split open, Jesus was looking into the heavens and asking them to once again open up. Or maybe he was asking God to open up the well of his healing powers. Or maybe be open was a mantra he had picked up ever since he had discovered through his encounter with the Syrophoenician woman that he must be open to everyone, not just a few. Or maybe, just maybe, Jesus was asking for the hearts of the onlookers to be opened. In his commentary on the text, Steve Garnis Holmes writes, "In so many ways, these words are at the heart of Jesus' message. He's inviting us to open our ears. He's inviting our open-mindedness. He's asking us to open our hearts. He's opening the grace of heaven to us. He's opening up the future. Maybe Jesus would not define faith as certainty, but openness." There's a lot of wisdom in the words of this commentator. I think this morning's text is more than just another miracle story, as if there's such a thing as just another miracle story. I believe there's more to it than a display of Jesus' powers. I believe it's a message that's intended for the church. And I believe the message is that we are called to be open. Yes, be open to the LGBTQIA community, but more. Be open to the neurodivergent person sitting in the pews, the unhoused person who depends on our food pantry, the person whose religion is different from ours, and the person of no faith at all. And when I say to be open, I don't mean just welcome them. I don't mean to consider our mission accomplished by ministering to them. I mean, we need to be open to how we can be transformed by their presence in our lives. Everyone has something to offer. Everyone. And it's upon us to be open to what people who are different from us have to offer. Maybe Jesus' mantra was indeed be open after having encountered the Syrophoenician woman. And when he said Ephphatha, maybe he was reminding himself to be open to the possibilities of the Spirit working in him and through him. And maybe we could do worse than to adopt it as our own mantra. Every time we encounter someone, maybe we could say to ourselves, be open. Or maybe it could be a sort of prayer as we rise each morning. Maybe we could ask God to help us to be open to the possibilities of the day, open to God's Spirit working in our lives. Be open. It's about more than hearing with our ears to what is being said. It's about listening with our hearts to the Spirit's gentle whisper. Amen.